The first sign of trouble wasn't a letter, it was a lock. A bright silver padlock, freshly clamped on the gate I'd installed just 3 weeks earlier. The chain was new too, gleaming in the early light as I stood there with my coffee steaming in hand, staring at it like it might explain itself. Someone had trespassed overnight. Again. When I bought the old lake last spring, the place was a ruin, half-drained, cattails choking the shoreline, dock rotted down to nails and memories. The previous owner, an elderly farmer, had left it to nature years ago. The parcel came with 56 acres and the entire water body. I had the deed, I had the survey, I had the county recorder's stamp. What I didn't have, apparently, was peace. By the second week of restoration, people from the neighbouring subdivision started showing up. SUVs full of lawn chair patriots who treated the lake like a public park. At first, they were polite. They waved. They asked if fishing would still be allowed, if their kids could still swim here like they always had. But always had didn't mean always could. The lake wasn't part of their HOA. It never had been. It just looked like it was, sitting pretty behind their manicured backyards. When I drained it for cleaning and sediment work, they panicked like I'd shut off their private ocean. Then came her, Karen Bishop, HOA president, pressed polo shirt, clipboard, and that permanent half-smile of someone who thinks bylaws outrank state law. She showed up on a Wednesday morning as I was guiding a contractor through the dredging plan. "Excuse me," she said, striding over like she owned the soil. "You can't perform major alterations without board approval." "Board approval?" I asked, deadpan. "This isn't your board's property." She tapped her clipboard. "This lake is part of Meadow Ridge Estate's common area. It's always been under our management." I pointed to the stake beside her foot. My boundary marker, neon orange flag fluttering. "That's the line," I said. "And you're standing on my side." Her eyes flicked down, then back up. "We'll see about that." She left. 2 days later, I found the padlock. The harassment escalated like clockwork. One afternoon, someone dumped lawn clippings into the drainage inlet. Another night, a pickup truck blasted through my gravel access road, leaving ruts deep enough to swallow an ankle. Then came the notices, bright yellow papers taped to my gate. "Cease unauthorized work," signed by Meadow Ridge HOA Compliance Committee. I kept each one, plastic sleeves, dated, photographed, and printed. Then I installed cameras. Trail cams along the tree line, a dash cam pointed at the entry road, and a motion light near the dock. I wasn't angry. I was collecting proof. 2 weeks later, I got it, 3:17 a.m. Footage showed a white Lexus SUV idling by the gate. The driver stepped out, bolt cutters in hand, snipped my chain, and replaced it with their lock again. License plate clear as day, registered to, of course, Karen Bishop. I called the sheriff's office. The deputy who came out, a tall guy with a coffee thermos bigger than his radio, studied the footage and chuckled. "She's claiming HOA jurisdiction?" he asked. "Yep." He shook his head. "She's about to learn what a plat map actually means." He wrote up a report and advised me to file a criminal trespass notice. I did that the same day. That weekend, I received an HOA special meeting notice in the mail, addressed to me. Apparently they'd voted to incorporate the lake area as community property and were demanding maintenance contributions. They really thought they could legislate ownership by neighborhood vote. I brought the letter to my attorney, a sharp local guy named Merrick, who'd handled boundary disputes for half the county. He read it, whistled low, and said, "This is going to be fun. They just handed us Exhibit A." The next morning, I started digging deeper. At the county assessor's office, I requested every archived plat, easement, and zoning revision for the lake parcel. I cross-checked dates, parcel IDs, signatures. What I found was crystal clear. The HOA's subdivision was platted after the lake was created. Their common areas stopped 50 feet short of the shoreline. The water body had never been deeded to them. In other words, they'd built their empire next to something they didn't own, and now couldn't stand that I did. So I restored it harder. New dock, cleaned basin, native plants replanted. I even brought in a state-licensed aquatic restoration crew, complete with permits stamped and filed. The place looked alive again. That's when the HOA sent a cease and desist through their lawyer. 4 pages of puffed-up legal language claiming historical rights of use and community stewardship. Merrick just laughed. They're citing their bylaws as if they outrank a property deed. Classic. He drafted a 2-sentence reply. Ownership of Parcel 17B is a matter of record. Continued interference will result in civil and criminal action. Govern yourselves accordingly. We sent it certified. And that's when the real war began. The morning after Merrick mailed that cease and desist, the lake looked like a crime scene. Plastic fencing lined the shore, bright orange and ugly against the blue. E-reflection. A fresh notice. HOA construction zone sign stood in the mud, staked right into my property. They'd actually moved onto my land. I recorded everything before I even touched it. Wide shot, date, time, and GPS coordinates. Then I emailed the footage to Merrick and the county surveyor's office. When the surveyor, a veteran named Jim Kessler, pulled up in his pickup 2 days later, he carried a metal detector, a clipboard, and a smirk that said he'd seen this before. He walked the property line, scanning for iron pins. These here, he said, tapping one with his boot, are original 1978 boundary markers. HOA's fence is 32 feet inside your parcel. He took measurements, marked GPS points, and signed an affidavit before he even packed up. They touch 1 more inch of this shoreline, he said. It's trespass. Plain and simple. I thanked him and saved 3 copies of his report. 1 went to the sheriff, 1 to my lawyer, and 1 to a waterproof folder I kept in my truck. Because I knew Karen wasn't done. That weekend, she showed up again. This time she wasn't smiling. You're interfering with our community improvements, she snapped. That fence is for public safety. Public safety? I asked. From what? Clean water? She folded her arms. Our bylaws allow us to maintain shared assets, and the lake has always been open to residents. You're the one trespassing, Mr. Walker. I pointed toward Jim's fresh survey flags fluttering along the mudline. That's the law, I said. Everything on this side belongs to me, and your fence is coming down in 10 minutes. Her voice sharpened. If you remove HOA property, we'll call the police. Perfect, I said. I'll wait with them. I cut the first zip tie. She stormed off, phone already pressed to her ear. 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled up, same deputy as before. He looked at the fence, looked at me, then sighed. She really doesn't learn, does she? Karen marched over. Officer, he's destroying HOA property. The deputy raised a brow. Ma'am, you've been warned about this. The property line has been verified by a licensed surveyor. You're trespassing again. She blinked, jaw tightening. That can't be right. Our maps. He cut her off. Not your maps, ma'am. County maps. When he ordered her to remove the remaining fencing or face citation, she sputtered something about community rights and historical precedent. But by the end of the afternoon, the fence was gone, and her SUV peeled away fast enough to scatter gravel. Still, I knew she'd come back, with paper this time. The next move was a masterclass in arrogance. The HOA filed a civil claim in small claims court, asserting adverse possession and community stewardship rights. Essentially, they were arguing they'd used the lake so long it was theirs by habit. Merrick almost spilled his coffee laughing. They're filing for ownership because they had barbecues by your waterline. He prepped our response like a chess game. We printed every deed transfer since 1952, highlighted each ownership change, included aerial photos from the state GIS archive showing the lake predating the subdivision. then added Jim's signed survey, time-stamped footage of the fence, and the trespass report. When we were done, the file was thick enough to stop a bullet. But I wasn't done collecting. That night, I walked the property with a flashlight and found fresh tire tracks leading to the dam road. I followed them, straight to a section of chain link that had been cut. Inside the fence, a pump was running. They were siphoning water from my lake into their irrigation pond. That changed everything. I shut off the pump, photographed the setup, and followed the hose to where it crossed into HOA land. Then I called the game warden. Since the lake was a regulated body, any unauthorized water diversion violated state law. Officer Delgado showed up at sunrise. He took one look at the setup and said, "Oh, this is a fine waiting to happen." He traced the hose, took photos, and collected the pump serial number. "They'll have to explain this to the Department of Water Resources," he said, scribbling in his notebook, "and they won't like that conversation." 3 days later, Delgado called me back. They admitted they installed the pump but claimed it was routine maintenance. I've already referred it to the county attorney. I thanked him, but I knew Karen wouldn't fold just yet. She'd built her identity on control of lawns, fences, paint colors. Losing the lake wasn't just a boundary loss. It was an ego collapse. And ego doesn't surrender quietly. So, I started planning for the showdown. Merrick drafted subpoenas for the HOA's meeting minutes and maintenance budgets. Delgado agreed to testify. The surveyor was ready. Even the deputy said he'd stand by to confirm the trespass warnings. All I had to do was wait for their next official move and make sure the whole thing played out where it mattered most, in front of their own members. At the next HOA general meeting. The HOA meeting was held on a muggy Thursday evening in the Meadow Ridge clubhouse. Polished floors, coffee urns, folding chairs in neat rows. I showed up early, dressed in a plain button-down and jeans, holding a folder thicker than their bylaws binder. By the time Karen Bishop arrived, the room was packed. Homeowners sat with folded arms, whispering. They'd all heard the rumors, something about me stealing their lake. Karen took the mic like she was hosting a pageant. "Thank you for coming, everyone. Tonight we'll be addressing a serious issue of property encroachment and unauthorized activity on what has historically been our community lake." I didn't move, just let her talk. She clicked through a PowerPoint of old photos, kids fishing, paddle boats, barbecue parties from 15 years ago. Then she turned to me. "Mr. Walker," she said, voice sweet but sharp, "perhaps you'd like to explain why you've been destroying HOA property and blocking access to our lake?" I stood, opened my folder, and walked to the front. "Sure thing." I handed her attorney a packet, one for the board, one for the county representative sitting in the back. Yes, Merrick had made sure a state survey official attended. "Those," I said, "are copies of the recorded deed for Parcel 17B, registered under my name, and the certified plat showing the lake's boundaries. Note the dates. The subdivision was built in 1983. The lake's parcel was established in 1952. You built next to it, not around it." A low murmur rolled through the crowd. Karen tried to smile. "Our records indicate—" "Your records," I interrupted gently, "aren't law." I pulled up my phone and cast a video onto the screen behind me. Security cam footage of her cutting my chain at 3:17 a.m. Bolt cutters glinting under the floodlight. A few gasps. One man muttered, "Is that Karen?" Karen went pale. "That's taken out of context." I nodded. "Sure. Just like this." I flipped to a photo. Her white Lexus, parked beside the illegal pump, hose stretching into the lake. Then another. Game Warden Delgado inspecting the site. "This," I said, "is a state violation. Unauthorized water diversion. The Department of Water Resources has already issued an inquiry." Merrick stood at the back, arms crossed, satisfied. The room was silent except for the ceiling fan. Then one homeowner raised his hand. "So, we've been paying dues for lake maintenance that wasn't ours?" I let the question hang. Karen's attorney whispered something to her, but it was too late. The board members were already flipping through the survey affidavits and legal correspondence. Another homeowner, older guy, silver beard, said flatly, "You told us he was squatting on HOA land. You lied." Karen tried to regain control, tapping the mic. "Let's not turn this into a spectacle." Merrick stepped forward. "It already is. Mr. Walker has filed a counterclaim for property interference, trespass, and unlawful diversion of natural resources. The Sheriff's Department, County Survey Office, and Game Warden have each confirmed documentation. You'll all be receiving official notice." You could feel the air shift, like a dam breaking quietly. Karen's hand shook as she tried to stack her papers. "This is outrageous." "No," I said. "This is accountability." 2 weeks later, the HOA withdrew their claim, under pressure from both the county attorney and their own members. Karen resigned for personal reasons, though rumor had it she was facing misdemeanor charges for the pump incident. When the dust settled, I got an apology letter from the new interim board president, a decent man named Lewis, who admitted he'd never even seen the plat maps until that meeting. They offered to reimburse me for the fence damage and water loss. I declined the check, but insisted on a written acknowledgement that the lake was private property. It was filed, notarized, and public record. That was enough. Now, on summer evenings, the lake reflects clean and calm again. The new dock catches the sunset, and sometimes I'll see kids watching from the far shore, the HOA side, where a simple sign now reads, "Private property. Access by permission only." Every once in a while, someone from Meadow Ridge asks if they can fish. I usually say yes, because ownership doesn't have to mean exclusion. It just means respect. Boundaries keep neighbors honest. But it's the paper, the deeds, the maps, the timestamps that keeps them fair. If there's a lesson here, it's this. Never assume the loudest person owns the land beneath their feet. Sometimes the quiet guy with the folder does.